Hello everyone, back into our first summer 2020 update. So here we go again. We're starting a new journey towards a new season. This time we're going to be doing summer updates. So yes, we released the Gazzo's spring forecast a week ago, last Sunday, and so the long range bandwagon now rolls on again, and we roll on to summer. With our updates. So we're going to be talking about February data for this first summer 2020 update. We're going to look at the CT and then have a look at rainfall. So I'll talk you through what we're looking at very shortly. Just to say, it's going to be quite a long video, as usual, with the long range stuff, so if you can't watch it all in one go, then don't worry, the video will be kept at gazzoviz.com indefinitely. I'll place it on the summer updates page, and there'll be a written summary as well, going over everything that we discussed in the video, and I'll get that up for you on the summer updates page. I haven't got a date for the summer forecast yet, but I'll have that for you in a week or two's time. You'll also be able to watch a video on the YouTube channel, of course, on Gazzoviz YouTube channel. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up on the video if you're enjoying it. Let us know in the comments what you think, and don't forget to subscribe to the Gazzoviz YouTube channel as well. So I say it's quite a long video. Sit back, relax, enjoy, and I'll talk you through our first batch of summer 2020 analogues very shortly. Just say Gazzoviz Sunny Roundup will be with you later on this afternoon. Big thank you to our good friend Richard Trott for supplying us with the Gazzoviz 2020 Summer Updates GIF. You'll be seeing quite a bit of this over the next few weeks as our intro and outro, and also midway point GIF. So big thank you to Richard for doing that. I can tell you that Analog's Guru James is out of hospital. If you're not aware, James came out of hospital a few days ago. He's doing well, he's back home, and we may even be able to show you the solar tracker from James in the Sunday Roundup later on. So James is progressing and is improving all the time. I think that's everything that I've got to tell you, so we shall get on with the first summer 2020 update. I want to begin by looking at February CT. So you remember, actually, that for the spring forecast, or for the spring updates, the last thing that we looked at for the spring updates, or one of the last things, was the February CT, with a CT range we estimated of 6.0 to 6.5, and actually we came in right perfectly in the middle of that range. We actually came out at 6.3 for the central temperature for February 2020. So it's a very mild month, of course. And so what we're going to look at for this first summer update is actually summers following February's with a CET range of 6.0 to 6.5. So it'll be the same years that we used for the last spring updates, if you like. So it's a direct follow-on, basically, from the last spring 2020 update. So the first summer that follows a February with a CET range of 6.0 to 6.5 is the summer of 1846. We have a pretty nice summer actually here to start us off with. We've got a nice area of above average height sitting across much of northern and western Europe. Below average heights are out in the North Atlantic. Jet streams pushing northwards, doing something a bit like that. I think that looks like a very nice summer to start us off with for the summer of 1846. A lot of dry and pleasant weather would be involved with that, I would have thought. So a very nice summer to begin with. This one not so good. This is summer 1848, and again we're following a February CT range of 6.0 to 6.5. This one very, very different. Look at that. The above average heights are up there over Greenland. We've got a deep trough of below average heights across much of northern and western Europe. The jet stream gets sent southwards. Looks okay for eastern parts of Europe, and southeast Europe will be hot there, but in the northwest of Europe and about trough of low pressure it will be cold and wet. The summer of 1848. Next summer is 1877, following a February CT range of 6.0 to 6.5. This one, again, doesn't look particularly inspiring, with below average heights in off the Atlantic along with the westerlies. That looks like it's an Atlantic-driven summer, so unsettled and westerly for the summer of 1877. The next one's not much better. This is summer of 1882, again with a deep area of below average height centred over the top of the UK. It just looks like a very cool and wet summer in 1822. A long gap then, you'll remember, to 1918. So the next summer following a February CT of 6.0, 6.5 is the summer of 1918. This one is quite an unsettled summer, below average heights, covering much of northern and western Europe. It's not as bad as the last couple of summers, but nevertheless, it's quite an unsettled summer in 1918. And 1920 isn't much better either. Again, following that February CT range 6.0 to 6.5, summer of 1920 is a very unsettled summer with deep low pressure, not just over UK, but covering much of western and northern Europe as well. And then we've got the summer of 1943, so quite a big gap then from 1920 to 1943. This summer, with below average heights out to west, do have some above average heights to our south, so it could be a rather drier summer this, especially for England and Wales. Probably quite cool, probably quite westerly, but not as bad as some of the summers that we've seen within this package of analogues. We then have a really long gap to our next summer, so we go from 1943 to 1995 before we see that CT range of 6.0 to 6.5 again. And this, of course, is a really good summer. 1995 is in our package of analogues, and it's a high-pressure dominated anticyclonic summer with the ridge tending to sit more or less over the top of the UK. Winds are in from the east. There's a lot of easterly winds during the summer of 1995. It's hot and dry. It's actually a drier summer than 1976. 1976 is the daddy of summers, but 1995 is actually slightly drier than 1976, but not quite as hot. And of course, what makes 1976 the daddy of summers is that the drought follows on after a hot and dry summer before, and kind of quite dry winters as well. So it's like the culmination in summer 1976 of a sort of 2-year drought and spell of very warm weather, whereas the summer of 1995 comes after a very wet winter for 94-95, and a very mild winter as well. And so the drought, although it was actually slightly dry summer of 1976, the drought wasn't anywhere near as severe in 1995 as it was in 76. Nevertheless, it's a hot and dry summer, and it is in our first package of analogues, so quite nice to see that appearing. I think if you want a nice summer, quite encouraging to see that appearing 1995 in our first analogues update for summer 2020. Don't have to wait very much longer, so we have that long gap from 1943 to 1995 to get a February CT from 6.0 to 6.5. And then we only have to wait 2 years from 1995 to 1997. And this is another pretty hot summer. This one has high pressure over Scandinavia. It's a more unsettled summer, much more unsettled summer with below average heights to our south. And of course, we bring in these hot easterly winds during the summer of 1997. June is very wet and quite cool. It gets warmer in July, and then we have a hot August, although very unsettled in August 1997 with lots and lots of thunderstorms. 2000 is our next summer. This is a rather unsettled summer, bit uninspiring. There are some warmer spells in there, but particularly in July, it's a bit grim in the summer of 2000. Always quite unsettled. Any sort of warm spells very limited in their scope and just lasting a day or two before breaking down into instability and thunderstorms. Nevertheless, there are some warm and thundery spells in the summer of 2000. Of course, it's setting up that tremendously wet autumn of 2000. 2011 is the next summer following a February CT range of 6.0 to 6.5. This one is quite a cool, unsettled summer as well, with a deep trough of low pressure over top of the UK and northern blocking up towards Greenland. So that's a very poor summer in 2011. And then finally, we've got the summer of 2014. Following February CT range of 6.0 to 6.5. Or maybe not quite finally, we'll find out in a moment. But this one has below average heights to the south and blocking to the north. It's quite a funny summer. It starts off very warm, but August 2014 is really, really cool, actually. So it wasn't finally. We've got summer 2017 as our last summer. And this one again, following February CT range of 6.0 to 6.5. This one with below average heights to the north, above average heights to the south, and in come the westerly winds. It's a front-loaded summer. Very warm and dry in June. By August 2017, it's getting cold and wet. So putting all of those summers combined, putting them all together, I should just explain, I'm feeling a little bit under the weather tonight while I'm doing this video. My eyes are very, very bad tonight. They're really sort of watery and irritated. And so I'm not feeling 100%. I'm certainly not feeling my best while I'm doing this. So just bear with me if I make any mistakes. I am squinting at the screen to try and work out what I'm looking at, actually, as I'm sitting here doing this. So just bear with me. Mistakes will happen, but I'm sorry about that, but it's just a result of rather inflamed and upset eyes that I've got. So, coming back to the update, sorry about that, off on a bit of a tangent. This is how all Junes combined are looking following a February CT range of 6.0 to 6.5. Looks quite unsettled for June. It's a bit of a northern blocking signal with above average heights to the north, and a trough of below average heights tends to be centred quite close to the country. So rather an unsettled signal for June. It gets worse though in July because the trough of below average heights tends to deepen in July. So I mean, most Junes probably favour unsettled weather overall, but could have some drier conditions in there. But for the Julys, it looks very unsettled and still quite cool signal with more high pressure within the northern latitudes. All August combined look like that, so rather unsettled again. Below average heights coming in off the Atlantic. Above average heights tend to be up towards Greenland. It is a rather unsettled looking signal for August as well. Probably not quite as bad as it is in July, but it is an unsettled signal for August. And this is how all summers combined are looking following a February CT range of 6.0 6.5, and you'll not be surprised to guess that it is an unsettled signal for the summers overall, with a trough of below average heights tending to be over top of the UK and some high pressure up to the north as well. Jet stream is pushed southwards. These summers following a February CT range of 6.0 to 6.5 look as though they are favouring a rather unsettled outcome. Right, I'll pause the video there, and when we meet back, we shall talk about February rainfall data. Of course, we know it was exceptionally wet February, record-breakingly wet February, and we'll have a look at what summers are like that follow very, very wet Februarys. More about that in a moment. I'll pause the video there, and I'll see you in around 2 seconds' time. Okay, we're back, and we're ready to resume the first summer 2020 update from Gas Weather. So if you've enjoyed this video so far, then don't forget to give us a like on the video, give us a thumbs up, also let us know in the comments what you think, and of course subscribe to the YouTube channel. You'll be notified when we upload this sort of content that you hopefully are enjoying and want to see. So in the first part of the summer 2020 update, we discussed February centering temperature. We're going to move on to February precipitation next. So let's do it. So we're going to go over to the England and Wales precipitation chart by month from the UK Met Office. This is showing each month's precipitation back to 1766. It's a very old and long-standing index of monthly precipitation data. That's our first year. Had a very, very dry January in 1766. So let's come down to the current year. We come down through the centuries and decades, and we get down to 2020. There it is. There is 2020 just there, and January 2020 came out with 82.7 millimeters. But February was much, much wetter. Look at that, 169.9 millimeters for February 2020. And of course that follows on from very wet weather through the second half of 2019 as well. But that is actually the wettest February on record for the England and Wales precipitation index. 169.9 millimetres actually smashes the previous record. The previous record was a very long time ago. In fact, not about 1990. For this precipitation series, February 1990 came out with 143.2 millimetres. It was a very wet February, but actually the wettest February for this England and Wales precipitation series was a long time ago. Back in 1923, February 1923, wettest February on record in the England and Wales precipitation series at 152.7 millimetres. But of course, February 2020 absolutely smashes that. It smashes it as it comes out with a monthly precipitation of 169.9 millimetres. So, over 15 millimetres more, a big difference from 1923 to 2020. So 1923, February 1923 is now the second wettest February on record for this series. Right, so let's have a look at the data then. So the range that we have chosen is February England and Wales precipitation of 112.1 millimetres to 152.1 millimetres. Of course, 152.1 millimetres was the wettest February on record from 1923. So, we're looking at summers following these Februaries. The first summer is 1904, following February 1904, which had England and Wales precipitation of 112.1 millimetres. The summer of 1924 was very unsettled, with below average heights out to west of the country, bringing winds from the Atlantic. Summer of 1904 was a cool and unsettled summer. The next summer is 1951, this following a February England Wales precipitation of 114.1 millimetres. The summer of 1951 was again very, very unsettled, with below average heights through much of northern and western Europe. Jet stream doing something like that, quite a cool and unsettled summer in 1951. As we go along, you'll see that the February precipitation increases, and we will get to what was the wettest February on record, 1923, at the end. Our next summer is 1999, following February England and Wales precipitation of 114.9 millimetres. This one, not a bad summer. Has above average heights to the north and below average heights to the south. That doesn't tell you everything, because it does have a very nice July. July 1999 is a warm and dry month, a really nice July in 1999. Regularly very warm, not overly hot, not overly oppressive, but just regularly very warm. A lot of dry weather, bags of sunshine through that month. It does have, it's bookended in June and August by rather unsettled conditions. So June and August aren't that good at all. But July 1999 is a very nice month. It's a warm and average summer overall as well. The next summer is 2002, following February England Wales precipitation of 115.1 millimetres. This one has above average heights over Scandinavia and below average heights to west. This is a rather unsettled, rather mixed summer, and often very warm, very humid, very oppressive sort of summer, but not often settled. So there's quite a bit of rain through the summer of 2002. Does have one very hot spell at the end of July, but otherwise it's just a warm, muggy, sort of cloudy and often quite unsettled and dampish sort of summer. Then we've got the summer of 1958, following February England Wales precipitation of 116.0 millimetres. And this one, very cool and unsettled summer in 1958. The jet stream is pushed southwards with the areas of low pressure. It's a really unsettled summer and often very cool in 1958. There's 2007. So we know 2007 was the leading analogue year for our spring forecast. It's already beginning to show up within the summer data as well. More about that at the end of the video. I've got a little bit to tell you about that at the end of the video. Excuse me, but this is how the summer of 2007 looks following February England Wales precipitation of 116.6 millimetres. This one with below average heights over to the south country, blocking to the north. It's a cold and wet summer, very wet summer with flooding rains, and the only saving grace is that it does get a little bit better in August of 2007, but otherwise this is a pretty grim summer, about as bad as it gets really in the summer of 2007. 1915 is next, following February England Wales precipitation of 123.5 millimetres. This one looks unsettled, below average heights over much of Western Europe, so this is another pretty cool and unsettled summer in 1915. We haven't seen much in the way of high pressure yet. This one's a little bit better though. This summer of 1925, following February England Wales precipitation of 124.4 millimetres. And this one has above average heights sort of over to the northwest country, below average heights to the south. Looks like it's a dry summer, probably quite cool. I would imagine winds are in from the northeast all the time with this summer, so I doubt it's a particularly warm summer in 1925, but probably a lot more in way of useful dry weather than we've seen in most of these summers so far. Then we've got 1960. This one looks grim. Follows February England Wales precipitation of 129.6 millimetres. This one with below average heights over UK, blocking to the north. That's a cool and wet summer in 1960. 1848 shows up next. It's there for both temperature and also precipitation analogues, a little bit worryingly for February. So yes, summer of 1948, as we've already explained in the first part of the video, is cold and wet. Next up is the summer of 1990, following February England Wales precipitation of 131.7 millimetres. This one's a better summer, has above average heights to the north, below average heights out to the west. There's quite a lot of easterlies with this. Excuse me, again, I think the summer of 1990 is a much better summer, probably the best summer that we've seen so far within this package of analogues. Then we've got 1916, and this one is very unsettled, below average height sitting over to the east country, blocking up to the north, maybe already starting to see hints of the very cold winter pattern that was going to evolve for winter of 1916, 1917. Possibly already as early as the summer of 1916, we're beginning to see those indications of what was in store in that summer. Jet streams push southwards. It's a wet and unsettled and often cool summer in 1916. The next summer is 2014, following February England Wales precipitation of 136.7 millimetres. Notice how, as we go along, the Februaries are getting wetter and wetter. This one, again, we saw it in the first batch of analogues, has below average heights to the south, above average heights to the north. The summer of 2014 starts off pretty good. It starts off very decent with a nice June. It deteriorates though August 20, and it has a really good July as well in 2014, by the way. But August 2014 is a little bit of a write-off type month. Very, very poor. And I think it's the coldest August since 1993 in 2014. The next summer is 1932, following February England Wales precipitation of 142.1 millimetres. This one with the above average heights out to the west, but below average heights to the south. In comes the winds from the northeast. Reasonable dry weather and often quite warm with that summer. 1977 next, following England and Wales precipitation of 143.2 millimetres. This is a unsettled summer, below average heights to the south, above average heights to the north. We had two hot summers before this in 75 and 76, but all memories of that are gone by the summer of 77, and we have a very abrupt reversion back to typical UK weather in the summer, which is often quite cool and often unsettled. Next, we have 1990, so this follows an England and Wales precipitation of 143.2 millimetres. This one, much better summer. Does look a little bit mixed. It has above average heights to our south, so we see indications of high pressure from the Azores, but average heights up to the northwest, and a blocking signal. It's quite a strange sort of summer, has a cool and quite unsettled June, but otherwise it's a hot summer, and of course we had that tremendous heat wave at the beginning of August 1990. That's the hottest summer that we've seen within this package of analogues so far, the summer of 1990. Then we've got 1950, so this follows an England Wales precipitation of 143.6 millimetres. The summer of 1950 is very unsettled, below average height centred over into the west of the country. A cold and wet summer in 1950. And then finally, we've got 1923. So up until February 2020, as we've already explained, for England and Wales precipitation, 1923 was the wettest February on record, with a monthly total of 152.7 millimetres. But of course, that has been beaten by February 2020, which had let's see, well, we had 169.9 millimetres. Anyway, the summer of 1923, very unsettled. Below average heights are to the north, above average heights down to the southwest, rather flat and westerly. So it looks like an unsettled analogue overall, but I think there is a reasonable amount of dry weather in there, actually. It's not a total write-off of the summer in 1923. And then bring all of that together. So this is how all Junes combined are looking when we have a February England and Wales precipitation of 112.1 millimetres to 152.1 millimetres, or now that would be, of course, 169.9 millimetres. But anyway, this is how all Junes combined are looking. Blocking in June around Greenland and Iceland, below average heights to our south and east. Jet stream is pushed southwards as well. Looks like a cool and wet signal for June. All July's combined look like that. Again, unsettled, below average heights tend to be over to the east of the country. The blocking signal does weaken and reduce a little bit, so probably not as cool as the June's, but nevertheless rather unsettled signal for July. And this is how all August combined are looking following England and Wales precipitation of 112.1 to 152.1 millimetres. And it's unsettled, below average heights again, tends to be centred over the top of the UK. We have a blocking signal up to the north. These look like unsettled analogues, both the CET and also the precipitation analogues for February. So this is how all summers combined are looking finally following February England and Wales precipitation of 112.1 millimetres to 152.1 millimetres. All summers combined look like that. Cool and unsettled, blocking towards Greenland, trough of below average heights underneath it. It's a bad package of analogues, both for February CT and also for February precipitation to start us off. There's no getting away from that. It is a pretty grim package of analogues to begin this first update. And maybe from here, the only way will be up. The last thing I want to talk about is 2007. So this is the spring analogue for 2007. Of course, we know from the spring forecast that 2007 turned out to be the key analogue year for this spring. We said at the time it's a little bit worrying to see that in terms of the impacts on the summer. So this is how the spring 2007 analogue looks. It is an anticyclonic signal in the spring. There's a lot of dry weather, particularly in March and especially so in April, but then it flips in May and we go into a cold and wet pattern during May 2007. But for the spring overall, it's a rather anticyclonic sort of signal, but then that's how it evolves as we get into the summer, and you see what happens. The high pressure goes north, sets itself up over Scandinavia, and the trough of low pressure develops over the UK and Western Europe. And if we looked at a 3-monthly analogue for May to July, it would look a lot worse than that, because that does also encompass August 2007, which was a rather drier and slightly warmer month. But May to July analogue would look a lot worse than that, I think. Now, this did raise quite a bit of alarm when we released the spring forecast last week. I just want to explain, though, what happened in 2007 in terms of La Nina. So this is the current sea surface temperature anomaly profile through the equatorial Pacific. We're sort of going off on a bit of a tangent with this. This isn't really analogue based, although we will look at ENSO analogues later in this season of summer 2020 updates. This is more like the sort of thing we do with the winter updates to some degree. when we look at this kind of data. But this is how the sea surface temperature anomaly looks through the equatorial Pacific at the moment. So we're around ENSO neutral. We have got a little bit of colder than average sea surface temperature anomaly just there. But overall, we're around ENSO neutral still through the equatorial Pacific. There are hints that we're going to go into a La Nina through this summer, primarily because both to the south and to the north of the equatorial Pacific Ocean, we've got cold and average sea surface temperature anomalies, but we are certainly not at a La Nina at the moment. This is how things looked in March 2007. Notice how much colder it is through the ENSO region at this point, 9th of March, or March the 9th as the Americans would say, March the 9th, 2007, or 9th of March. Notice how much colder it is through the equatorial Pacific Ocean at this point in March 2007. We are already seeing quite a decent signal for La Nina to be getting going. Compare that to what we have this year, and there's no comparison really. We are much, much further behind in terms of the development of any La Nina at the moment compared to where we was at this point in 2007. Much colder Pacific Ocean as well. This is back in the days of the cold PDO, but we was in from around 1995, I think, 1995, 1996, something like that, to just recently to around 2015, or 2014. So we have much, much colder average sea surface temperatures up here. The southern Pacific Ocean is also a lot colder as well. Just generally a much, much cooler looking Pacific Ocean compared to what we've got this year. And then, of course, that developed rapidly into La Nina. So this is how things look by June 2007, and again by this point we have at least a moderate La Nina setting up in the eastern part of the equatorial Pacific Ocean. It hasn't yet made it out to its western part of the equatorial Pacific Ocean. That happens later on in the year, but certainly by the start of summer 2007 we was well and truly into a sort of moderate eastern based La Nina, and that just sort of strengthened through the year. And I think that's the key point really. It's how quick we flip into a La Nina that's the determining factor. If we only have a weak La Nina and we do it very, very slowly, we go into that weak La Nina very, very slowly through the next few months, but it probably won't have much impact on the summer. It will be if the La Nina ramps up very quickly to quite a strong level and does so in a few weeks through this spring into the beginning of summer. That's when we could have big problems for the summer of 2020. But of course, for the spring forecast, and I did explain this in the spring forecast, but I wanted to add more to it for this first summer update. So for the spring forecast, we did say, but we didn't think we was going to get a May anywhere near as bad as May 2007, because we aren't seeing those signs of a very rapid transition into La Nina. However, what happens in March does not necessarily mean we won't get a quick transition into La Nina. This is how things looked in terms of the equatorial Pacific Ocean in March 1988. No sign at all, really, of La Nina in March 1988. Much more basic looking map, by the way. We're a long time ago now. We're back into the 1980s. So we're looking at this area just here, for the central and western part of the equatorial Pacific Ocean. Put your teeth in, Gav. And we're looking over here for the sort of western part of the equatorial Pacific Ocean towards Indonesia. So the Pacific Ocean actually split on either side of the chart. But anyway, that's how it looked in March 1988. But look what happens within 3 months to June 1988. All of a sudden, very quickly, we have a rapid flip into a strong La Nina. Yes, that's even stronger than the La Nina that we had in 2007, actually. It's another really bad summer in 1988, especially so July 1988 was an absolutely terrible month. It was a dreadful month, one of the worst Julys of the 20th century. And again, it has that, in common with 2007, a rapid transition into a moderate strong La Nina. But there's no sign of it really in March 2007. And you'll notice also in March 2007, the northern and southern Pacific Oceans are nowhere near as cold as they were in 2007 either. So even from a more widespread sort of view of the Pacific, there is absolutely no sign there in March 2007 that by June we would be into a strong La Nina, and of course that really did put the kibosh on the summer of 2000 and on the summer of 1988. So at the moment it's inconclusive. There are definitely hints we're going to get a La Nina setting up during this year. I think there are quite a few hints of that. It's going to be a case of how quickly it happens and how quickly we transition into it, and whether we go into quite a strong La Nina or certainly a moderate La Nina into the summer. And it's inconclusive at the moment. We are behind where we was at this point in 2007 in terms of the development of La Nina, but as I just showed you, that doesn't necessarily mean that by June we won't be into a moderate strong La Nina signature, because we saw what happened in 1988. And we just have to wait and see. And of course, we will be looking at analogues for ENSO later on in the season. That'll probably be one of the last things we show. It usually is. We like to wait it out and see exactly where the Pacific goes. So we normally do that as like one of the last things that we show within our updates, probably at some point during May, I would have thought. That's enough for today, though, I think. So that's it for this first summer 2020 update. We are off and running now with the summer updates. The countdown to summer 2020 has begun. Next week, I think we'll be looking at more widespread sort of winter data. I think we'll look at winter temperature and also winter rainfall and see what impacts that could have on our summer. This video will be placed on the Summer 2020 updates page. There'll be a written summary that goes with it as well. Get that up for you this evening. We've got Gaz with his Sunday Roundup coming up after lunch. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and let us know in the comments what you think. But for the first Summer 2020 update, that's all for now, and thanks for watching.